That's Brian Thompson right there, the CEO of United Healthcare. He was shot and killed while outside the Hilton Hotel.
And United Healthcare, of course, one of the largest corporations in America.
We're told that Thompson was headed to a conference for United Healthcare that was expected to happen in the ballroom of that hotel, of the Hilton there in Midtown, when there was a gunman who fired shots about 20 feet away from him as he was approaching that hotel.
We don't have anything on the way of motivation yet. The police are saying that they think it could be a targeted hit, that the gunman was lying in wait. If this was a conference that had been announced in advance, perhaps he then knew the CEO was going to be there. That would explain why he struck at this moment.
As you saw, there's no clear indication yet as to what the motive was for Thompson's assassin, and there still isn't at the time that I record this video. Although, if you look at the YouTube comment section for those news reports that we just watched, a lot of people are making some educated guesses. For example, the top 2 comments on CNN's video say, "You make a lot of enemies denying healthcare to people," and another person adds, "Sounds like they denied someone's treatment, they died, a family member wanted revenge, and blamed the CEO." And on the subject of motives, some comments on MSNBC's video echoed that same point. What would anyone have against the CEO of a healthcare corporation? Another person adds, "One of the first times that the list of prime suspects would be in the millions." Yeah, and I have so many more comments to show you, but to their point, as journalist Ken Klippenstein points out, United Healthcare denies nearly a third of all claims that they receive, giving them the highest rate of claim denials of all health insurance companies. And as this Ars Technica headline points out, they also use an AI model with a 90% error rate to deny care to people, which means that the Americans who pay them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars every single month aren't getting the healthcare that they're paying for. They're being ripped off. And it's not just bad enough that they're being ripped off. These insurance denials results in medical bankruptcy or death. And as the American Bankruptcy Institute points out, medical debt is one of, if not the most common cause of bankruptcy in the United States. And a report published by the Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that 14 million Americans, that's nearly 6% of all adults, owe at least $1,000 in medical debt, and 3% owe more than $10,000 in medical debt. And if you're wondering why lawmakers aren't fixing the system, well, it's because these same blood-sucking insurance companies that rip us off and kill us have completely captured our entire government. In fact, United Health spent more than $5.8 million in 2024 alone lobbying both Republicans and Democrats. Their beneficiaries included Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and both the DNC and the RNC. So they're really making sure to cover all their bases. And as journalist Ken Klippenstein points out again, they're the top campaign contributor to dozens of politicians. So in case it wasn't already painfully obvious, I don't have much sympathy for Thompson, and I don't think you should either. In fact, you should save that sympathy for his victims, because this man became a multi-millionaire by profiting off of the suffering of working class people. And his company is directly and indirectly responsible for the deaths of countless Americans. So I'm going to try my best to filter my thoughts throughout the course of this conversation, because I don't want to end up on the FBI's watch list or something, but just look into my eyes. You know what I'm thinking. Okay, we're all thinking it. If Satan chooses to recall one of his demons back to hell, you don't have to feel sad about that and offer your condolences and sympathies and thoughts and prayers. In fact, if it makes you smile, that's okay too. You're not a bad person if you react positively to the death of a killer. In fact, I'd say it makes you a reasonable human being who's justifiably outraged at the cruelty and lack of justice in this world. And guess what? You're not alone, because Americans reacted to this man's death in that same way. Tabitha Chow shared some screenshots of comments on TikTok that speak to just how Americans feel about this. Quote, "I'm sorry prior authorization is required for thoughts and prayers." Another person says, "Sending prior authorization denied claims, collections, and prayers to his family. Was his trip to the ER really emergent? According to his own company, my husband's heart attack wasn't an actual emergency, and we were out of $3,000, full deductible." It's crazy what my first thought was, and then I looked at the comments and realized I'm not alone in my thoughts. I just can't find the care. Maybe if they ask for pre-approval of my care, then after they pay their required deductible, I might be able to supplement some care. I can't even pretend to care. I hope he's looking up at us. God damn, there's more. My only question is, did the CEO of United Healthcare die quickly or over several months, waiting to find out if his his insurance would cover his treatment for the fatal gunshot wound. Sharon Zhang reshared an old post of hers about United Health where she tweeted, "Good news, everyone. If I want to get out-of-network care this year, I only have to pay a maximum of $1 million out of pocket." Now, I actually want to stop and explain this for international viewers who might not really know what she's referencing here. So when you buy health insurance in America, you are limited to a network of physicians that you're able to see. If you go out of that network, your insurance isn't going to cover that. And then you've got to pay for that healthcare out of pocket. And it is very, very spendy. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Just stay in your network. And on paper, that makes sense. But in practice, it's not so simple because the doctor's office that's closest to you isn't necessarily going to be the one that's in your network. For example, my health insurance actually went up this year. So now I'm paying more than $900 for 2 people. But if I wanted to buy a more affordable plan, well, the closest doctor in that network that's more affordable is 30 minutes away from me. So in order to keep my primary care physician that I have now and continue to go to the clinic that's closest to my home, I had to eat the cost increase because it was effectively the only choice that I had. Now, that's not even the worst case scenario here. Let's say you're unconscious and somebody calls an ambulance for you. Well, the EMTs, they're just going to pick you up and take you to the closest hospital to get you the care that you need as quickly as possible, as they should. But again, the problem is that the closest hospital might not necessarily be the one that's in your network. And 2 hospitals just miles apart could be in 2 entirely different networks. In other words, you could be fucked over if you have a medical emergency, even if you have insurance. And this happens a lot. In fact, in 2022, 60% of ambulance rides were out of network, which means if they were lucky enough to survive, they'd face financial ruin. So going back to Sharon's tweet, her insurance company is kind enough to cover out-of-network costs so long as she ponies up a maximum of $1 million. After that, they'll cover the cost of everything after that first million that she pays out of pocket. How generous of them. But I've got some more reactions. In response to Thompson's death, this person says United Healthcare has denied his claim for the ambulance ride and ER visit because the claim was filled out incorrectly. That happens. Beth says United CEO should have had his primary care physician recommend bullet removal surgery months ago so he would know if he was treatable today. LOL Overruled says United Healthcare CEO denied access to life. Rachel says United Healthcare almost killed both of my parents. Good riddance, asshole. But let's look at some more comments in response to the news reports on CNN and MSNBC. So under the CNN video, people said, if you die from a preventable disease because your insurance was denied, that's murder too. Was this someone referring to the shooter ruined and driven mad by the U.S. healthcare system? The richest country in the world with some of the worst healthcare. Yeah, this was bound to happen. This person says, and how many deaths is the CEO responsible for, I wonder? How many dying and suffering people did he profit off of? Very hard to have any sympathy here. Now on MSNBC's video, people are saying, are we sure that the gunshot wound wasn't a pre-existing condition? Claim denied. And finally, I wonder what he did to that man. I wonder what he and his company did to that man and his friends and family. And just so we're clear, this same sentiment was shared far and wide. Look in the comment section of any video and you'll see zero sympathy from Americans. But it goes so much deeper than that because Americans know that politicians are being bribed by these corporations and CEOs so that way they look the other way when these corporations rip us off and kill us. And some of them are getting a real wake-up call when they're sending out their thoughts and prayers to this greedy CEO, and the comment sections, they're not too kind. In fact, they're pushing back very fiercely and actually calling out the corruption. For example, Amy Klobuchar responded to the news tweeting, "This is a horrifying and shocking act of violence. My thoughts are with Brian Thompson's family and loved ones, all of those working at United Healthcare in Minnesota." Now, as you can see, she was ratioed by the first response, who points out that United Healthcare is a major donor to her, and others made similar statements. Beau Fort says, "Why don't you feel bad for the thousands and thousands of families that Brian has helped to put in bankruptcy while making millions and millions of dollars? How much does United Healthcare donate to you, Amy?" Quinn says, "Up yours, Amy. You should be investigating that organization for crimes against humanity. That man murdered thousands of people, so don't you dare get on this platform and praise him or offer sympathy for his family, because they didn't have any for anyone else." Now, in case you were curious, she took more than $16,000 from United Health, but she wasn't the only one to face backlash because Dean Phillips also reacted to the news tweeting, "I'm horrified by the assassination of my my constituent, Brian Thompson, this morning in NYC and have his family in my prayers. And that response was met with the same sort of replies like this one. Yes, all your other thousands of constituents just died writhing in pain from denials, but this special boy was assassinated. So as you can see, Americans are fucking pissed. And these politicians need to think deeply about why so many people are reacting to this news in this way. Their condolences come off as tone deaf, especially because people like Dean Phillip and Amy Klobuchar, they don't have that same sympathy for the victims of this CEO. And they never offer those people who lose family members because of these companies the same condolences. When they both ran for president, as a matter of fact, they were against Medicare for All, which is the one policy that would have put an end to this nightmarish so-called healthcare system that we have in the United States. And people like them and their ilk, they actually had the audacity to pretend like they were the ones defending us when they were arguing against Medicare for All. And I say this because remember how during the 2020 Democratic Party primaries, when Bernie Sanders was pushing for Medicare for All, and they were screeching because they were talking about how his plan would be bad because it would abolish private insurance? Guess what? That's a good thing. That's what made his plan so damn good. We don't need private insurance. No matter how much they tell us we love the private insurance their donors give us and force us to buy, they will never trick us into believing it because we have to deal with these leeches ourselves every fucking year. So you can't convince us that we like something we hate with a burning fucking passion. It feels like gaslighting. Now, there's one solution and one solution only. It's called Medicare for All. Say it with me, Medicare for All. It would offer comprehensive care to every single American, regardless of their income or location, and it would be free at the point of service. Would our taxes go up in order to fund this system? Yes, but that still means a net gain in money for us since we'd no longer have to pay what is effectively a private tax to these insurance companies. It would reduce overall healthcare spending, and it would drastically improve healthcare outcomes. But don't take it from me. Jason Lemon of Newsweek explains, an analysis conducted by researchers at Yale University, the University of Florida, and the University of Maryland found that transitioning the United States to a single-payer healthcare system would actually save an estimated $450 billion each year, with the average American family seeing about $2,400 in annual savings. The research, which was published in the medical journal The Lancet, also found that Medicare for All would prevent about 68,000 unnecessary deaths each year. Quote, our study is actually conservative because it doesn't factor in the lives saved among underinsured Americans, which includes anyone who nominally has insurance but has postponed or foregone care because they couldn't afford the copays and deductibles, says Allison Galvani, an author of the study and researcher at the Center for Infectious Disease Modeling and Analysis at the Yale School of Public Health, told Newsweek. That right there is the solution. It is staring us right in the face. But every time we start to have a serious conversation about healthcare reform in this country, corrupt politicians swoop in and they crush that momentum at the behest of the health insurance industry, their donors like this individual. During the 2020 primary, when support for Medicare for All reached new highs and healthcare became the number one concern for many Americans, well, health industry executives bet big on Biden in its war against Medicare for All, and that bet paid off. The conversation about Medicare for All was tabled once again, but to satiate our hunger for reform, Biden said that he supported a public option. But of course, once he was elected, we never heard about it again. So to go back to the assassination of Thompson, again, at the time that I record this, we don't know specifically why it happened. It could have been a scorned lover. But if the reaction to this news isn't a wake-up call for every politician in America, I don't know what will be. Because Americans are not happy right now. And a revolutionary fervor is clearly bubbling up in this country more and more as people begin to realize that the system is failing them. And healthcare is just the tip of the iceberg. But if politicians don't adjust to this reality and they continue to let billionaires and multinational corporations buy their complacency and complicity with our suffering, I wouldn't be surprised if actual pitchfork mobs start to materialize again. Because people have had enough. They're sick of it. And if this country refuses to do the one thing that literally every other comparable OECD nation already does, which is just care for the sick, Americans are going to continue to see how illegitimate our system is. And to be clear, our system is illegitimate. but we have to name that. It isn't broken. It's working as intended. It's called capitalism. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable, I think that you need to explore why that is. We've all been brainwashed into this system, and we've been told we shouldn't question it. But we should. People, they're not the priority in the system. Profits are. And unless Americans wake up and reject our capitalist system of exploitation, we're all only further enabling our own suffering if we continue to defend this system and support it. But Americans are starting to wake up, and I think that their responses to this news story is definitely evidence of that.